A deeply worrying experience that has raised fresh concerns about emergency response times in the region, and follows on, I guess, from our discussion yesterday about the potential strike action from ambulance personnel as well. Molly Kelly's 7-year-old daughter Rhea, who is autistic and non-verbal, became gravely ill last weekend, but the family then faced a 2-hour wait for an ambulance to take her from Shannondoc in Kilrush to University Hospital Limerick. As questions grow around ambulance availability, rural healthcare access and ongoing pressures in the system, I spoke with Molly earlier to hear more on her story. Molly, good morning to you.
Good morning, how are you doing?
Very well. You and your daughter perhaps less so after what you've been through. But first, Molly, would you mind telling us a bit about your daughter?
Yes, so my name is Molly and I live back here in the west of Clare. My daughter is 7 years of age. Her name is Rhea and she has autism, non-verbal.
Can you take us back to Sunday then? When did you first realise your daughter was seriously unwell? And would this have been an unusual incident, or can your daughter be this unwell at regular or irregular intervals?
No, definitely completely unusual. She was a little bit of a bug on Saturday. Nothing major, nothing out of the ordinary for most kids that age. Seemed absolutely fine by that night. The next morning, she seemed much better. She seemed much, much better. And I was like, okay, she can have her shower, and freshen up, and seemed to be getting back to herself. And then with that, and literally a space of an hour, everything just changed and she got extremely sick very, very fast. Okay,
so naturally enough, you're very concerned, perhaps even panicking.
Yeah.
I'm not sure, but yeah, you were. So what did you do from that point then, Molly?
So, of course, straight away the call to Shannondoc. Now, they were extremely fast with the call back to us. And with that, in 20 minutes, we were actually very lucky at the time because there was someone present in the Shannondoc in Kilrush, which would be our local one. We were just outside the town we live. So they told us to be up there within the next 20 minutes, in which we did. And when we went up there, the situation got serious very, very quick.
So it got serious very, very quickly. How so?
Well, first of all, her temperature was extremely high. Her sugar levels were extremely low, nearly non-existent. And basically, she was absolutely, for a child who would be non-verbal for full conversation, but it has certain words. And this would be very out of the ordinary for Rhea, but Rhea was screaming in pain, like absolutely screaming in pain, her tummy. And her body had become ice cold. So to touch her, she was absolutely freezing. So it turned very scary very, very quick. And the doctor that was up there became very concerned very, very quick.
What did they suspect it was? What did they suspect might be happening with Ray?
At the time, he was almost fully sure that it was appendix. But the concern was because of the pain, because of her vital signs, because of everything that was happening with her body. He was concerned that the appendix had actually bust. And it just got very serious very quick. So very fast, he had rang for an ambulance to be there very quickly because she needed to be in hospital.
Okay, so the situation really heightened. I mean, an issue with an appendix is bad enough, but if they suspect it has burst, that's very, very serious.
Yes,
how frightening was the moment for you as a parent, Molly?
It was absolutely, I'm trying to kind of piece it together at the moment because I think you're in fight or flight mode at the time because you're trying to do everything you can do to fix this, to make it better. And it was very frightening because he was using a special gel substance that they give them into the mouth to try and get sugar levels even back up. Because obviously their resources are, they only have so much up there. And even however long he was giving it to her, her sugars kept dropping. Everything just kept dropping. So it was just getting very, very, very scary. And I suppose at one point I had this surreal moment of, is this actually happening to us? Is something this bad actually happening? Like this is really real. Like, she's really ill. And then when he had rang for the ambulance, I think that's when things really got scary. Because you feel in the back of your mind there's going to be help there, don't you? You think, okay, if something this bad is happening right now, we're going to be helped. But we weren't helped.
Yes.
We weren't helped at all.
You think something or someone will come out of somewhere and quickly.
You think someone's going to save the day. Yeah, you do. It's because as a parent, you don't ever want to think of the worst case scenario because you can't. You can't cope with that scenario. You have to think, okay, someone's going to help us here. Someone's going to sort this out. It has to happen. Like someone has to save my little girl.
But at least you had the doctor from Shannondoc. They've, that is someone. They've told you what they suspect it is. They've called for the ambulance. So naturally enough, you're thinking, okay, help is on the way.
Another thing is I saw panic in that doctor as well, myself. So I think as a parent, when you see a doctor panic, then you panic more. I think that kind of can change things then, because normally yourself, doctors will be like, it's all fine, we have everything under control. But I think when the problem happened with the ambulance, I could see panic then.
And the problem with the ambulance, what was that, Molly? Can you tell us more? Because they've called for the ambulance and you're waiting.
Yeah, so he called for the ambulance straight away. Other patients that would have obviously come for appointments were all told to leave. They were outside in cars, they were told to go. He rang for the ambulance, and the ambulance told him, he obviously said the seriousness of it and how quick we needed one. So basically there was no ambulance. They said that there was no ambulance available in Kilrush. There was none in Ennis, and basically it was coming from Limerick, and that it would be leaving Limerick as soon as possible. Now, you're talking a day where there was lots of things going on at the moment in Clare, and we were so far back. So he was like, this isn't acceptable. Like, I need an ambulance here quick. Why is there none in Kilrush? Is there not one somewhere sooner? And they were saying no. Now, they had put her to the highest emergency. She was actually at the highest number. They do it in numbers. She was the highest, but that was the only way we could get an ambulance, was to come from Limerick.
And even with that, Molly's top priority, and how long did it take?
So even with that, it didn't actually happen in the time frame they said it was going to happen. Now, in the meantime, I've called my family, because this is turned into really kind of a frantic situation up there.
Of course.
So I've called my family. My sister has driven up to where the ambulance bay is in Kilrush, up by the hospital. There is an ambulance there. There is the ambulance jeep there. She's knocking on the door. She's whatever. Anyway, basically, there is no one there to man it. There is no crew there. There's no one there. So it turned out that there was an ambulance there. There was an ambulance jeep there, but there was actually no crew there to man it.
And did you inquire as to why?
At the time, no, because she went up there. She went up, let's say, to see was there anything happening. Like, you have to imagine, we're all down here frantic. We're not allowed to bring her in the car because she's too ill. So the Shannondoc is saying no. We're saying we'll bring her, we'll go, we'll take her, we'll get there fast. They're saying no, she's too ill. You have to stay here until we have an ambulance or we have something, paramedics here. So then my sister drives up there because, you're just thinking out of the box. She went up there, they're there. She actually took a photo of the ambulance and the jeep up there, but there is no one at the door. There's no one to man it. So then we tried to get the helicopter. So when they had organised the helicopter for her, they had agreed, okay, we're going to get the helicopter for her. They said the helicopter, the only one that was available, was one that you cannot bring a passenger. So I wasn't allowed to go with her. Now, this is a 7-year-old little girl who is autistic, non-verbal, who is already severely sick. And they want to do this to her, which actually could have brought on something worse. So the doctor felt then that wasn't the right move, because he actually argued with them on the phone. He said, like, you can't expect this little girl to go on a helicopter without her mum.
That would have been, I'd imagine, even if she were well and she was going on a helicopter trip by herself, Rhea, it would have been traumatising.
Something very serious in her, especially a child, when you have to remember whose vital signs are all dropping, whose sugar levels are literally non-existent, and you're going to put her through that trauma. And I had to even ring, like, this will just tell you the doctor. The doctor even had, like, say, he was on the phone to the ambulance, but he also had me ringing them. So I was also ringing 999. And I ended up talking to, like, a supervisor. And they were like, look, we're trying, we have the ambulance on the way. ETA is like, 40 minutes now. Now we're up there already. Like, this whole scenario went on for 2 hours. 2 hours of, the only words I can call it is terror. Absolute terror. It was 2 hours by the time we had Rhea into the ambulance.
And then you have the additional time it takes to get from Kilrush to UHL.
Yes. And the paramedics drove at unbelievable speeds with the sirens and lights the whole way. The protesters were amazing because they had cleared the whole way. They knew we were actually coming, and they had cleared everything for us. And then they ended up opening the tunnel for us. So the tunnel was open for us to get there as fast as we could.
And once you eventually reached UHL, what was the experience like?
To be fair, they were absolutely fantastic. And we are forever in their debt. They were actually doctors waiting outside the ambulance when we got there, where she was brought into the resuscitation room, where she was there for, I suppose, 4 hours until they stabilised her to move her. But time was what we needed with Rhea, and we lost so much time. Now, we're very grateful with the outcome, of course, but the trauma experience that we were put under that day is horrific, and especially for Rhea. But it's not fair. Unfortunately, I'm not the only case. These cases are coming up constantly in West Clare.
And we have heard, you mentioned the air ambulance, there have been calls for an air ambulance base in the county, particularly out your part of the county in the west. Do you think that could have made a difference in your situation?
100%. If we'd air ambulance, we would have been there, in absolutely no time. But the complete delay in communication, even with the ambulance services, they constantly were saying it's 40 minutes out, it's 40 minutes out. That's what they kept saying to us. And it just felt like forever. And it turned out it was 2 hours before the ambulance got there. And when even the ambulance got there, they got Ray into the ambulance and we took off. The ambulance crew, she started deteriorating rapidly in the ambulance. And they were just, they were doing their best to keep everything as good as they could. But, even the speed we had to go to get down there, it was such a bad situation. They were absolutely phenomenal. But they were so sad as well because they were like, hate that you had to wait. It's not their fault. They were after getting called from Limerick to come up.
Of course, yeah. And we're talking about air ambulances in your part of the county, and it is an issue that has cropped up many times before in Morning Focus, Molly, and people in the West feeling disconnected or forgotten about when it comes to healthcare. Do you feel rural communities like yours are being left behind when it comes to emergency care? And what changes would you like to see to make sure no other family goes through this?
And 100%. And the thing is, it's been very upsetting as well because you hear all these things from the TDs and the ministers and all these things of saying how the protesters, they got in the way of this, that and other thing. The protesters that they knew we were coming, they did not stop my daughter getting to hospital. They didn't stop it. It's the government who stopped my daughter getting to hospital. It's the government who have been making such wrong decisions by everyone. The fuel, of course, is a massive issue. It's a massive issue. But there's so many issues in Ireland, especially in our healthcare, what's going on. And a little 7-year-old girl should never, her whole life in front of her, this should never have happened. And for anyone else who has been in similar situations in the West of Clare, we are so forgotten back here. We are so forgotten. It's devastating. And time is the essence with anyone who's sick. Anything in these situations, time is essence. And, when you're in a bad situation like that, you don't have the time. There should always be an ambulance allocated. If one has gone out in a long call away, no matter what, there should be a rotation of, there is always an ambulance available in West Clare. And if that isn't available, if by chance that can't happen, there has to be a helicopter on standby.
Well, on Wednesday's show, we discussed the significant investment in the National Ambulance Service in Clare, an expansion of 12%, but that we discussed that on foot of news that there's potential strike next month. Roughly 2,000 ambulance workers set to engage in industrial action over their long-running dispute over pay and conditions, and we heard the reasons why, the different roles they're being asked to perform, and pay has not changed. Now, the health organiser for SIPTU, John McCamley, told us that there are still talks with HSE and hopefully some agreement or conclusion can be reached, but that there will be contingency plans put in place. But as a mother who's gone through what you have gone through with Raya, how concerned are you about the possibility of strike action in May?
To be honest, I feel like these people have no choice. And I think, as I speak for anyone in this country, I think that's what's happening right now, is that people are being so backed into corners that they have no choice. These ambulance people don't want to protest. They don't want to strike. They don't want anyone's lives to be lost. These people are out, doing everything they can to keep people alive. Like what they did for my daughter. They worked tirelessly the whole way to Limerick for her. You know what I mean? They did everything they could possibly do. It wasn't their fault they're not there. It's the government's fault that they're not putting any effort in allocating and doing right healthcare for the likes of West Clare and for all the other counties in Ireland. We're not the only place forgotten. It's happening everywhere. These farmers don't want to be out protesting. They want to be out working hard every day. That's what they do. It's in their DNA. But they have no choice. And the people of Ireland, we're all being forgotten, and lives are going to be lost. We are very, very lucky with Rhea. We are absolutely blessed because, I'm still very traumatised from it because you have that. It's just the most unimaginable fear. It's unimaginable to think that, my God, if she had died in us. And if she had died because of this negligence, that would have been so much worse. You know what I mean? Because think of, we just couldn't get help. How in this day and age are we back here in the West of Clare and we couldn't get help? We couldn't get an ambulance or a helicopter to bring our little girl to hospital. How in this day and age is this happening?
Molly, Can I ask how Rhea is doing now? Is she on the mend?
Yes, she is on the mend. It's a little bit of a road, but she is definitely on the mend, thank God. And because of the great work of Limerick Hospital, and like I said, we've been very, very grateful, and they've been extremely good to us. But, a lot of this trauma and a lot of this could have all been avoided. It's very upsetting, and it's upsetting for all the people of Clare, because I'm not the only one that has gone through something like this here, and I know there is numerous stories. And it's heartbreaking. It's heartbreaking to be in an emergency situation where there is no help.
That is understandable. I mean, we would hope that no other parents will go through what you went through with Rhea, but until, I guess, we have...
Until I think we all make a stand, it will happen again, but people, the next person mightn't be as lucky.
Molly Kelly, thank you so much for highlighting this, for sharing yours and your daughter's story, and for joining us on Morning Focus. Very much appreciated.
And thank you so much for having me. Thank you, everybody.
And that was Molly Kelly, who I spoke with earlier on, and we reached out to the HSE on this, and they did send us a response. It says the HSE National Ambulance Service regrets that any service user should have a negative experience, but does highlight they can't discuss individual cases, case details for obvious reasons. Goes on to say the NAS works to deliver the highest standard of care for people using its services. All 999 and 112 calls received for emergency medical assistance are prioritised using an internationally recognised system that triages calls based on clinical priority, which range from life-threatening cardiac or respiratory arrest to minor illness or injury. It means that during particularly busy periods, lower acuity calls may wait longer for an ambulance. Ambulance bases have additional vehicles on site. These are in reserve for breakdowns and servicing. It also means crews coming on duty have a vehicle immediately available if the earlier crew and ambulance are attending another incident. This ensures continuity of service. The response goes on to say that the NAS is undergoing a significant transformation programme to enhance service delivery, optimise resources and expand its role in providing alternative and community-based care. Since 2022, additional investment has seen the NAS base budget increase by an additional €83 million to €285 million last year. Over the same period, staffing levels have increased by 28%. That's an additional 588 whole-time equivalent staff, bringing the staff at the NAS in total to 2,655. Capital investment of €126 million has also been made in fleet replacement and expansion to support these developments. And finally, it says the plans for this year include significant investment in the NAS, an additional 263 whole-time equivalents and €20 million in new funding, including additional resources in each of Kilrush, Ennis and Ennistimon. This investment plan will deliver 21 additional crewed ambulances nationally, operating at peak demand, as well as 4 more intermediate care vehicles, and continue development of the clinical hub and alternative care pathways.